free agent signings 2024. We talk about all of that in this episode of the No Horsing Around podcast. Let's go. What is going on? No Horsing Around family. Zach Boyd, Stephen Burton, back at it again. And guys, before we get started on this, we're going to talk about free agents. I think Steve and I are both excited to go over, 5 people each. We just picked up some guys. Interested in your comments. I just wanted to say, man, I'm super excited to be back here with my brother recording. I took a little bit of time off, had some personal things going on with the family. Just wanted to get everything, the way it needed to be. And I appreciate Stephen holding it down in the meantime. But really, really, really excited, Stephen, to talk about free agency as football is getting ready to get to that point. I believe here in about 6-7 weeks.
I know it kind of creeps up on you. When you don't make the playoffs, right? It feels like it creeps even slower. But that's the first big thing for us, right? You've got the draft, you've got the other things. We don't have a coaching search this year. We don't have a quarterback to look towards. We know who that is. It's kind of just focused on free agency, which, like you said, is 6 to 7 weeks. So we got lots of time to kind of dissect because at the same time, mock drafts, things like that, they're fun, but we don't know really anything till we re-sign players and we get out there and we do it. So it should be fun, man. I'm excited. Me and you traded list earlier today on who we're going to touch on each.
Yeah, I mean, and like you alluded to earlier, I mean, it's really hard to do a mock draft until free agency signing goes through, right? Because a lot of those holes that you have on your roster, will be filled and supplemented. You hope, if this is the year, if there ever was a year, if everybody listened to Chris Ballard's end of season presser, I'll say this, Stephen, he seemed more open-minded than he has in the past to potentially maybe going out and signing some guys. So thought it'd be a fun exercise for us to do. And let's just dive right in like we always do. No particular order, but just player one on my list, a player on one of my 5. Antoine Winfield Jr., Tampa Bay safety. I think everybody on this that's a part of this Colts Nation knows that we struggled at safety this year. And you could really tell when Julian Blackmon, had the injury and he went down. We're just very young, very raw, and we did everything we could do to try to patch that up. But ultimately, this guy gives you championship pedigree, Stephen. Obviously, he's got the lineage, with his father playing, and he was at a high-level football player as well. But you shouldn't sleep on this guy. He's a world champion. He's been in the playoffs multiple times, and he can really, really help your football team. And if there's one hole that I would like to see the Colts maybe go out and fill, it would be that lead safety position.
Yeah, I like that pick, man. I mean, me and you talked earlier before we traded a list, and that was a name that we talked about that we really liked, because he has the pedigree. He has the pedigree of having grown up in it. He is a world champion, and he was a significant factor on that team. Like, he wasn't like, this afterthought. And he's 25. Like, that's kind of the thing. I think as you look through our list today, too, on both sides, you're going to see the common theme of younger free agents for the most part. Like, we don't want the aging veteran to come in here. I don't think that's a good match right now because it's not win now mode, right? No matter what we want to believe coming off of the season, it's not win now mode. I like that pick. I mean, looking at him, he is like he's a ball hawk a little bit with the number of interceptions and how he plays and how active he is. And like you said too, champion and a critical part of it. I like that one. I would love it if they went after him. We'll use the air quotes with our guys too. I highly doubt he gets out of Tampa.
Yeah, it would be. I don't know, man. I mean, Tampa seems like they might be in a transition year. Somebody's not going to be there. You got Mike Evans out there, which did not make our list. A little sneak peek right now because of his age. Very good wide receiver, unbelievably, good wide receiver. Just didn't make this list. But that being said, I mean, when you look at guys, and I think one thing that we lacked a little bit this year, Stephen, we needed that dog on that back end, right? Like that guy who's just not afraid to mix it up and adds a little bit of that edge to your defense. So I think that would be a good one. But man, I'm telling you right now, I'm excited about your list as well. Why don't you start off with your first guy on your list and let everybody know kind of maybe in your grab bag, and Steven's wish list for the free agency offseason.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and this is one that we share, right? This is definitely one that we share with, and people know we've done a video on him. It's Brian Burns, right? Brian Burns out of Carolina. I do think he is going to be leaving Carolina. They've been offered so much for him in the past. What was it, 2 years ago? They got offered 2 ones, and they didn't move him. They should have moved him this year. They moved they've moved Christian McCaffrey and they moved DJ Moore. They should have moved him, but they didn't. I don't think he's back there. For me, and this is the pushback I've gotten when I've mentioned him, is the idea of, we set the record for sacks, right? Like we set the record for sacks in Indianapolis. I think you have to have that lead for what you said, that lead dog almost at on the line, that guy people have to worry about, that TJ Watt, that Myles Garrett. It's gonna allow other people to eat across the line, but I think you gotta have that guy that just keeps offensive coordinators awake and looking at how they're going to take him away. And he's it for me, man. I mean, he's it. He's young. He's so talented. And I like how he fits. He's played different positions along the line. He's played a D end. He's played a stand-up linebacker. He's played a couple different things. So I think he would fit the defense really well too.
Yeah. I mean, and you alluded to it earlier, you mentioned you need that lead guy. He's a closer, right? We've got a lot of guys, along the line. We've got great depth, and that's nothing to take away from a DeForest Buckner. I loved what Dio brought in his season. I thought Tyquan Lewis had a great year. Quiddy had some flash moments, but you don't have that actual closer. And when you look at most of these teams, that go further and advance to the playoffs and make it up into the playoffs, they generally have one common theme, and they generally have a closer. They'd have a guy who just really keeps you up at night, like you mentioned earlier. So we shared that one. That one was the easy pick for both of us, and I think you're right. It might be time. It's a new regime in Carolina, right? Like this is usually when you see players like that have a chance to walk in free agency because there's no real ties to Brian Burns. They didn't draft him. Now, obviously, he's a super talent. Carolina would love to retain him. And I don't know what that situation is going to be. Maybe they want something for him. It's a sign and trade type of deal. We'll just have to see. But moving on to number 2 on the list, you know what? Let's just stick with pass rush and let's stay in the division. Let's go with the guy who's had 2 really good years. And as a matter of fact, he's given us a hell of a time too, Josh Allen. It's going to be a free agent. Now, speaking of guys who probably aren't going to get out of the building, this is probably going to be one that doesn't get out of Jacksonville. I would think, at a minimum, is probably going to get franchised. And we know that, guys. These guys are high-level stars, may not even get a chance. But these are just guys that I think that could, if they became available, that would really impact this football team. And you talk about, one word that stood out to me with Chris Ballard was explosiveness. We need explosive players. And this guy here, I mean, SEC country, I know that's where you're down there from. He's been explosive ever since he's been in college and fought through a little bit of injuries his first couple of years, been a little healthier. And Doug Peterson comes in, they revamp his style, and man, he has really been good the last couple of years. And in particular, has been good against the Indianapolis Colts. So, if you can't beat them, sometimes you just join them and go out there. And so Josh Allen will be the second guy on my list, Steven.
I like it. We did a video on him. We've done a video on him where we talked about, his match, how he paired. He's another one that's played across the line. At Kentucky, he was a D end. He played outside linebacker. He's able to rush the passer. His biggest year was this year, obviously contract year. What do you have? I mean, I pulled it up, 17 and a half sacks. I think he had half those. I mean, the game he had, the one you're talking about, right? The game he had against the Colts, he had, what did he have? 3 sacks that game? Yeah, three sacks against the Colts in game 1. So you know what he's like. He's super athletic. He's a freak. And
Yeah,
on the same token, you can't beat him, join him. You've seen him play twice a year for the last 4 years. It also would be fantastic because it would weaken a division opponent,
exactly. I
right?
love that,
I mean,
actually.
you take one of their best players, you put him on your team, he automatically becomes the star of the D end. It would be a really, really good sign. Now, I would also I caution everyone who's listening to these guys that we're talking about too, like a Brian Burns and Antoine, the, Josh Allen specifically. That's a high ticket. That's $100+ million player probably
Oh,
on
yeah.
his
Yeah.
contract right there because
No
that
doubt
is such a
about it. That's
premium
going to
position.
cost you real money to go get a guy like that.
Yes, and
So
you got to be willing to do it.
it's an investment. And, I would have to lean on, our pro scout personnel team, Chris Ballard. If you want to make that investment, you're talking, north of $100 million. So, something to look out for sure. But with somebody else out there, Stephen, who else did you have on your list? Love to hear number 2 from you.
So I went with Xavier McKinney from the
Okay.
Giants. Yet again, young, talented on the back end. You're talking about what he had. He had 3 picks this year. A few years ago, he had 5. He's kind of that roamer. He really came into his own the last couple of years and his overall playmaking, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you kind of I think you can sense a theme between the two of us. I wonder with Julian Blackman if he's going to be back. And so
Right.
you've got to have and we've been searching, right? The Colts have been searching since Chris Ballard's been here for that playmaking safety. We
Yeah.
thought it was going to be Malik Hooker, and it wasn't. We thought we looked like it could be Julian Blackman. I think we're still up in the air. We think it could be Nick Cross. We haven't seen enough. Go get yourself a bona fide person who can be that playmaker, who can call
Yeah.
game on the back end, because that's when you look at the strength of the defense, right? Like that's the weak point is the secondary and it's the back end. And I think me and you could probably both agree. We'd love to get some corners in here. We'll probably talk about a few. I don't know if Ballard makes a move at corner because he feels pretty good about like the young guys he wants them to play.
Yeah.
But go get yourself a veteran. And I mean, I'm not big on like where you went to school, but he's a Bama kid. So I mean, he knows how to play in big games. He's played with the Giants. He's played in the playoffs. I mean, I like it. I think it'd be a good one. He's not like this. He's up there, but he may not be the highest ticket one that you're going to go after too.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned them. Maybe, we know how Chris Ballard is a little more frugal when it comes to free agency in the past. Maybe a guy who's still going to cost, but maybe not cost quite like the guys we've talked to prior than him. You're going to get an opportunity to still get a really good, valuable football player, can help your football team. And I think Chris Ballard's very aware of whether it be via draft or free agency or both, that we had issues on that back end. And I think that's something that they will address at some point. So I like it, man. I mean, I think it would be definitely worth kicking the tires on, depending on what order. I think if I had to rank them, I probably would like Winfield more, but probably not as realistic to be on that. Going to go ahead and kind of head over to third on the list for me. And we're going to stick with, the defensive back position. We're going to transition into corner. Jaylen Johnson, the Bears, played very, very well this year. Obviously, he didn't get the extension that he was hoping for. The Bears have a lot of money, so this might be a hard deal. They could either franchise tag him or sign him to a long-term deal. But coming from a Matt Eberflus defense, which we know that Chris Ballard really values, that 4-3 zone coverage corner, that fit is probably about as good as you could hope for. We want to talk about $100 million. Again, here we are, $100 million player, being over a 5-year duration. And he's been very good. I mean, he's been very solid for sure. And I don't know. I think I probably line up with you, Stephen. I think he probably likes our corners. So the big splash at cornerback position, I don't know that Chris Ballard would be as in love with this call as we would as fans. But if you really want to go out there and get a lockdown and put him beside a Juju Brents and then have a Jaylen Johnson, first man up, I mean, I think this is going to be a big ticket and a big investment if they go that route. But I still think he's worthy of being on this list because he's one hell of a corner and he upgrades that room instantaneously.
Yeah, he's definitely. I mean, he's a name that I think we've heard all year, right? Like I agree with him. I think he's probably one of the if he is not the one, he is top 3 at the position that's going to be going into free agency. The Bears have a
Yeah.
lot of money, but I think he's pissed at them, and he may not want to resign with them because they wouldn't do it last offseason. But he is probably outside of a Josh Allen, right? He's going to cost a lot of money and potentially
Yes,
picks
sir.
too if you were to do like a sign and trade or something like that. Or he's,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
he could still be franchise tag too. Like we don't know, but and I say all those ones to reiterate how talented he is. Like he would immediately take the spot on the other side of the field from Juju and shut that. Like that would just be done. Like you don't worry about it. It'd be like when we got Stephon Gilmore, but way younger, where you just
Yeah.
don't have to worry anymore. So I mean, I like that pick a lot. He's one that I definitely had on my list before we talked, so we could kind of change him up. But and he's played both sides too. Like that's the other thing too. Like
Yeah.
he's not one of those corners that is I gotta play on the right side. I gotta play. He can play anywhere.
Yep.
So I mean, I think that's a great pick. I think that would be a tremendous add to him. Yet again, it's all about is Ballard winning? Is this the offseason where he's finally willing to spend some
Yeah.
money on maybe on a premier player?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll
I know I've
see.
got my fingers. I wonder if he's going to spend money on a premier player in regards to what we've always talked about, which is surrounding AR with talent.
Yeah. Yeah. It should be interesting, man. Next one up for you, Steven. Who you got?
So I'm gonna say it, and I think people coming off of last weekend aren't gonna love it. It's Chase Young. I know, right? Like coming off of last week, coming off the speculation that he's not even going to play in the Super Bowl, supposedly that he could be benched because of effort. I think he's tired. I'm going to look at it like this: change of scenery, change of what you're expected to do, right, and who's around you. I think he wants to be paid. I'm going to compare him to a Jadeveon Clowney. That's, I think, a really solid comparison to where I think he has all the talent in the world, tremendously talented. I think a motivation is something. I honestly think you could probably get him on a 1-year deal. I think people are going to be super hesitant. I think it's a prove it deal because he's going to need to prove it. And I think if you put him, this is going to sound funny because of where he's at in San Francisco, surrounded by tremendous talent. If you put him on a line with Buckner and Grover and Quiddy and all of those guys who are high character players, I think you're going to see him thrive a little. He came from Washington that's dysfunction. He went to San Francisco where he's really not needed, and I think he knows he's not needed. And the standout on that line is always going to be Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to be asked, if he came here, he'd be asked to do a lot. But I think you have a really strong, you've said it for years, right? That Ballard built the locker room in a way where you could absorb maybe a player like this and his personality and maybe get the best out of him. Maybe it is only 1 year though.
Yeah, I mean, so this will be the first one I think on the list that I probably disagree with you on. And that's okay. I mean, I think that if they were to kick the tires on a 1-year deal, I could live with that. Definitely would not invest long term with him. It's a little bit, Rick Venturi has a saying that always kind of sticks with me, and I think it's really prevalent with a guy like a Chase Young. Kind of looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. I mean, he's just he looks all the part. Physically, you're like, my gosh, that's the prototype of a defensive end and what you want. But then you hear about lack of effort. Couldn't really make it work in Washington. I know he dealt with some injuries early on, but couldn't make it work in Washington. They don't even sign him, to the extension on the rookie deal. They don't sign him to an extension at all. They trade him, and then he goes to play for San Francisco, which should be a really good situation for him. And now he's, potentially not even going to play, as a starter in the Super Bowl. That's a red flag for me. It scares me. I'm not saying the talent's not there. I'm not saying the potential's not there, but it would take some really good coaching. It would take some just kind of a turnaround. Maybe a change of scenery would be good for him, but I definitely think he's going to be a candidate for a 1-year prove it deal. And if that were the case, I think I could live with the 1-year prove it deal. Long term, absolutely not. Because I'd be scared that investment would be money down the drain, and maybe you don't get what you need out of a player like a Chase Young.
Well, and I will point out too, there is the chance, right, with him that there's a very good working relationship between the Niners and the Colts, right? They've made trades in the past. They've discussed trades in the past. Buckner knows players who are still probably on that line. You would be able to probably get a lot of information before, but I'm with you on it. Like even as I put him on the list, it's partially because I think he's gonna have to prove it, especially if he doesn't play in the Super Bowl.
Sure,
he's gonna have to do like that 1-year prove it deal, and why not, man? I mean, maybe we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Last guy on my list, wide receiver. We went Calvin Ridley. Here's a guy who obviously Jacksonville traded for, came in. I think Jacksonville's in a weird situation because they're gonna enter the situation where they're gonna be a little more cap strapped moving forward. Being able to have all of these guys, these long-term deals. You've already got Christian Kirk, who you've got Evan Ingram, you've got Christian Kirk. You can't keep all of these guys. And the one thing that the Indianapolis Colts have missed this year and are going to probably be looking for in some regard, whether it's the draft, free agency, they needed more out of a guy like an Alec Pierce, a guy who could stretch the field, a burner. And I think the level of talent between Alec Pierce and a Calvin Ridley is there's a big gap there, man. I think he would be an upgrade. Now, another guy that would cost a lot of money, but I think about in my mind, you mentioned it earlier, and I thought it was a great point. Take a guy away from a team in division, as well as a guy who can really, really run. When you have a quarterback who has no problem throwing that ball 50, 60, 70 yards in the air down the field, an ultimate weapon. If you want to talk about explosive players, we all know how he started his career in Atlanta with Matt Ryan. And then, of course, he had the gambling incident. So I don't know if that's going to cause, pause for some of these organizations, but it would be a guy I would absolutely look at, but it's going to cost some real money. And considering the fact that you're going to potentially, I would think most likely sign back Michael Pittman Jr., you're going to have a lot of money invested in your wide receiver group if you did go this route. But I still think it's the right call to get a wide receiver, whether it be with that top 15 pick, whether it be trading up, whether it be free agency. I think you need explosive players. And I think that Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are on the same page on that. I think they're going to go find that next guy for Anthony Richardson in the long term.
Yeah, I like him too. I mean, he's uber talented. We saw it firsthand against the Colts, obviously twice this year. He is the burner. He is the take the top off. While you were talking, I looked it up. I mean, for his career, he averages 13.5 yards per reception. Like he's getting chunks.
Very good.
And we may not even sit there and know it. He had over 1,000 yards, right? I mean, he's a little older in regards to who we've looked at, because he's 29 right now. So he's a little bit older than who we've looked at, but he is absolutely somebody. And I'm going to push back on one. I don't know if he'll cost as much as we think because of the gambling, because of him kind of squeaking over, missing that time. And then you have other receivers like, I think everyone's going to be throwing money at T. Higgins. He's not on shocker. He's not on our list because I think someone's going to toss serious money at him, and I don't think Ballard's going to be that guy. But, I mean, it's he's you want a receiver that can complement your quarterback. And we know, like, I think Alec can do that, because of his ability to stretch the field, but we didn't see it because we didn't have a quarterback, although he's a Pro Bowl quarterback. We didn't have a quarterback who could complement his game the way he played it. You do now. And I think this is definitely a guy that could benefit your team while, like you said, hurting, a team that has a quarterback that needs all the help he can get, because Trevor Lawrence is dog crap.
Yeah. Well,
toss that in right at the end, right?
Hey, we'll see how that goes. Last guy on your list, Steven, bring them up before we head out of here. Who you got, man?
My last guy is, I'm going to go same position.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Gabe Davis. Me and you were talking about this. I was back and forth on about 3 different players.
Man, that's a good one.
I went with Gabe Davis because he's big, he's fast, he takes the top off. He plays with a quarterback currently that has a very similar skill set to Anthony Richardson. And if you look across the board, when they rank the wide receivers, he falls in that class of, that's a dude that Chris Ballard might give a 2-year contract to. Bring him in. Like, he falls in there. He's not top dollar. He's not bottom of the barrel, but he's that guy that, he's like the, Devin Funch just back in the day, right? I know that he played horrible for us, but he did play. But that receiver who falls in, who's not going to command massive money, but is really talented. I think he falls by the wayside a lot because you think of Stephon Diggs out there, and you think of Dalton Kincaid now, and you think of just Josh Allen. But we're talking, what was it? We're a year or 2 removed from him having like 4 touchdowns in a single playoff game. I mean, he's a very talented receiver. And it sounds funny. I think the bigger the body, I think that's going to help Anthony too, because it's hard to miss big bodies. It's going to help develop that accuracy. Yeah. I like this one. I think this is a very realistic one too.
I would agree. I think of all the people that we brought up, it seems the most Ballard-ish. I think you're going to pay him B money, not A+ money, and you're going to get a guy who can absolutely fly down the field. You're going to get a guy who can obviously, has had big games in the past. 4 touchdowns is I don't care who the hell you are. If you catch 4 touchdowns in a game, you're pretty good. Also can take the top off. I mean, if you're looking at, we talked about, Calvin Ridley earlier. This guy can take the top off as well. And I also like the fact that you mentioned Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson are very similar in their styles. They like to run, but they have big, big arms. And a lot of times Allen just threw it up and said, Gabe, run underneath of it and catch it for a touchdown. And I think you could see that same scenario happening, here in Indianapolis. That one, when you put it on the list, I was so jealous, man, because I was like, damn, man, why didn't I think of that? Because that's a really, really good one, honestly. That was a really, really good one. So, hey, I mean, I think we've compiled a pretty good list, about 9-10 guys here that we can think about. I'm interested, Steven, and I know you are as well, is those comments, man. I want to see who's on your free agency wish list. Let us know. Maybe we'll do a volume 2 when it gets a little bit closer and mention some of the guys that we didn't even think about, because we know you guys are always, in the know when it comes to that as well. Again, guys, thank you so much for, allowing me this time away from the show. Had such a good time, Steve and I, over the years of creating these things and being a part of you. I've missed having this interaction, and most importantly, I just missed this interaction with Steven, man. I mean, it's been so awesome to get back on here, talk a little bit of Colts football. I look forward to doing it in the future as well. And I haven't forgot this whatsoever, but I'll just say this, I love you, and I know Steven loves you. And we are definitely out on this one. Thank you so much, guys.